Welcome to the Filmistines, the double-featured podcast. Join us as we unravel the interwoven experience of the continuous conversation of cinema. Take part in pairing movies with their cursed counterparts, movies that share DNA, or even pairing questionable duos by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Filmistines. We offer tiers at the $1, $5, and $20 level. For the $5 tier, we grant the ability to request films to further the discussion. So grab some popcorn, sit back, and get ready to join the 100-year conversation. This is the Filmistines, where movies are more than just entertainment, they're an experience. And welcome back to another episode of the Filmistines. Thank you guys for joining us today. I am joined today by my broke-ass friend, Lucy.
Hello, everyone.
You can join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for brand new episodes of the Filmistines. Some recent episodes include The Iron Claw, Perfect Days, The Zone of Interest, the 2024 Mean Girls, and Ferrari. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas over on our Patreon at patreon.com/Filmistines, and come leave nice reviews on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Come request a movie. Come subscribe for $1. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys so much.
Are you stressed and filled with anxiety like I am? Maybe in a bit of pain from that car accident you had a few years ago? Well, the sponsor of today's episode, Hempville CBD, has us covered. They have the highest quality products created by chemists and doctors. Hempville carries everything from CBD to THC dispensary grade without those despicable dispensary prices. Order your Delta 8, 9 edibles and vapes along with the THCA flower and get free shipping when you spend $50 or more at hempvillecbd.com. Check out the link in the description for more details.
But today we will be talking about Yorgos Lanthimos' 2023 film, Poor Things. I just want to say right off the top that this movie is why I watch movies. This is a glorious movie. And is it my favorite movie 2023? I think there's a high possibility of it being yes. And it may have entered the pantheon of my top 5-10 films. But before I say too much, I really, really want to know how you feel about this movie, because this is obviously a bizarre movie, and those can be very 50-50 with you. How do you feel about Poor Things, man?
Yeah, I didn't know, first of all, I didn't know coming into this movie that this was a bizarre movie. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know who was directing it. And if I did and you told me, it wasn't clicking in my head what kind of movie this could potentially be. So I came in watching this movie, I don't want to say with low expectations, or I don't want to say with any kind of expectations other than I knew I wasn't going to like it. So maybe like negative expectations, not high or low, but just bad. Like, I knew this was going to be a bad movie. I came in with a bad attitude.
You came in with your arms crossed and
Yes.
was like, impress me.
Yes. Like, I don't want to watch this. I've seen the trailer. I had seen the trailer, and I don't think I watched like a full trailer. It must have been like a short of the trailer. So it was giving me this like, oh, here's Emma Stone being a quirky, blunt character that we're all gonna learn to love just for her being so quirky and fun and diverse, just for diversity's sake. And that's the bad attitude I came in with.
Well, and I guess it's worth mentioning that both of us are 50-50 on Emma Stone.
You might be 50-50 on Emma Stone. I don't like Emma Stone. I didn't like her in La La Land. I didn't like her in, I don't know, Easy A. I don't know what else she's in. She's in Spider-Man, right? She was,
yeah, one of the Spider Friends.
Yeah, she was Gwen, right? I don't know. She died. I know that, which was a cool death. Not gonna lie, but not due to Emma Stone. But I just wasn't an Emma Stone fan. I hadn't seen her in anything worthwhile. But I know you love La La Land, so that definitely probably spoke to you a little bit more. But I was very surprised watching this movie and how much I really liked it. It was weird, yes, but it was weird in a lot of the good ways. It wasn't like a what the fuck weird that, yeah, I mean, for me, those kinds of weird movies are definitely 50-50. Some of them are just a little too weird and maybe something I have to really think about that I'm not ready for that. That's just way too experimental for you to get me to analyze something so critically.
But it begs for the analysis, right?
This film? Oh, for sure. Yes, this film is phenomenal. I mean, everything from the performances to the story to the cinematography to the fucking score. Oh my god, that was amazing. I mean, every single little detail in this film was absolutely insanely great. And I was very surprised. And even after watching the movie, I wanted to find things so I could tell you that I didn't like it, just so I could be right with my wrong attitude coming into this. But I couldn't find anything. And it would frustrate me more that I couldn't find anything to be wrong with this movie that I didn't like.
Yeah, you're also a hipster and don't like popular things.
I don't know about that.
I'm just messing. I'm a little surprised how popular this movie is, to be honest. And I was also really excited for you to watch this movie because I think the very first movie I made you watch with me was The Lobster.
No. That was probably the second movie you made me watch with you. The first movie you made me watch with you was Tusk.
Well, that's another classic. But The Lobster is one of these really early films in my love for the craft and showing me what movies can be, what they can look like, what they can make you feel, how they challenge you, right? It might be the very first of those films. I'm not super sure. There's a weird kind of bias maybe I have for Yorgos in that he's like my favorite teacher when I was a kid, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been thinking about this movie a lot, as I think you have too. We've sat on this for about a week or so, and I'm really curious how you feel about this movie, what you think it's about, these performances, obviously that score, but the editing too. I think this is a masterclass film that can be read into from a few angles.
No, for sure. I definitely agree with you there. I have struggled a little bit to think about how this movie made me feel, first of all, and then interpreting what this movie was about. Because coming into the movie itself, there's this kind of motivational story about survival and what it means to be alive. And it kind of turns into this self-resilience and self-survival story. And we experience that through Bella. How a doctor, in this case, God, can give you a second chance at life. And just how kind of beautiful this all can really be. Because Bella was this very, disturbed, anxious woman that went to a route that should really be the last resort for us humans. Suicide is not something that should be the first option for anybody, and it's so sad that that's what she resorted to. And Dr. Godwin saw that and didn't want to bring her back to life unless it was a possibility that he could give her a blank start almost. And just something about that is such a really beautiful and motivating story. How he does it is insane, and I love it, and it's very, Frankensteinish and just so bizarre and weird. And the scientist in me has really just loved where we went with this and just the growth we got to experience with Bella.
I like a lot of what you're saying there, and this might sound crazy, but hear me out, okay? I think this movie is about the evolution of man, of man's timeline, of the evolutionary process from conception to the death of God.
You're right. That is insane.
I'm going to try to give you a little bit of an outline of my thoughts on this, and then we can unpack it if you like. So we have Bella in the beginning. She's this primitive idiot created by God. And of course we have God, who is God. But we have God's dad, who is the concept of evolution and the mystery that comes with the random kind of mechanism that is evolution. And that final result is God itself that kind of gives purpose to a higher form of life, which is Bella. God then introduces class and a sense of morals, which is represented through Max. But just when you were least expecting it, temptation pops up in the form of Duncan. Duncan then evolves into the form of just the human gambit of emotions and challenges the primitive side of humanity, which is Bella. Emotions don't only lead to temptation and destruction of the mind, though they lead to ideas. Just like Duncan leads Bella to the sea of ideas, where Bella meets the ideas of Emerson and Diogenes, of course, which is heavily referenced when Duncan is in the way on the boat when she's trying to read. There's a famous quote by Diogenes where he says to Alexander the Great, "You are blocking my sun." You know, exactly what she says to Duncan. Along the way, she's also exposed to luxurious things, things like music, very emotional things, class, maybe a sense of purpose, and even the necessities of like commerce, a functioning collective economy. All the way to this idea that God is trying to marry the primitive side of man to a sense of class and morals, Max, that then gets interrupted by temptation again, this thing in the back of our head that sabotages ourselves, right? And is then represented through Bella being a prisoner of her mind, which happens to be her being a prisoner of this former husband of hers before she jumped off the bridge, right? But this time, her having enough power to kind of navigate out of that lack of self-control over her emotional state. Told in a maybe non-linear way, because we saw the outcome of what that looks like in the very beginning. Her jumping off a bridge, right? And then ending with the death of God because man killed God. Heavily talked about by Friedrich Nietzsche. And ultimately landing on the fundamentally most important labor done by humanity, science. Trying to get a grasp on the natural world and taking things as far as they can. So that is a crash course on my analysis of what this movie is actually trying to tell you. But through a funny lens, of course, because this movie is first and foremost, I think, making fun of how silly humanity kind of looks like. So yeah, man, does that ring any bells with you?
Yeah, that's definitely a big picture way of what I saw here. My theory was kind of, Bella learning to be a human, and at the end of the day, cruelty and destruction is what made her become a strong, independent woman to now be out there in the world and being good with her inner self, which is basically what humans have done. And it's basically what humans do at an individual level, watching, I have a ton of nieces and nephews. Watching them grow up, you see these different stages. Like you just said, okay, the primitive stage, here they are grunting, pointing to, the terrible twos when they're destroying everything. Kind of like Bella when she was poking out the eyeballs of that dead corpse and having so much fun and throwing the plates and just finding laughter in the destruction of it. To your kids growing up and learning about masturbation and sexual thoughts and all those things. So, I mean, that's a good big picture analysis that you just did there, and I like it.
Yeah, and I like what you have to say a lot, too, about it basically being a coming-of-age story, because there is some big truth in the micro-evolution that happens with an individual, for sure. Of course, through the adaptation lens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is largely also what human evolution has also revolved around, is the adaptation lens and less of the natural selection lens, because we mastered that part of it.
Yeah, that's true.
We've mastered that part of it so much that we create our own plants and breeds of dogs and everything else, you know?
You telling me you're pro GMOs?
A little bit, yeah.
No, I like a lot of what you have to say. And I also like how there's also a hint of keeping your childlike nature in this film. And it's something that really speaks to characters like Max and Duncan, and even the random men that come to solicit Bella. You know, when she's there and, you know, she's about to have sex with these men for money, she still makes a game out of it. So it can be a pleasurable experience, not only for her, yes, that's important, but for them too. And they're just having fun. And there's something so childlike here that, again, speaks to the motivation I found in this film.
No, totally. It completely ties that childlike wonder to the unconventional scientific mind, as God would have said, right? He seemed to be kind of frustrated with the lack of enthusiasm, you know, others would have around his work and stuff, and how sterile it felt. And I think there's a jab there in today's world where, kind of like what we talked about in Perfect Days, and how manufactured so many ideas are, and how it's lost its the soul.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I also like your theory a lot because it really helps me put Duncan as a character into perspective, because I think he was the hardest character for me to analyze. I was struggling a bit with finding what he had to play in this film for me.
It's funny because he's the most important character,
I know,
in all of humanity, you know? He is that thing that makes us human, for better and worse.
I know, you said temptation. I was like, oh my God, like my brain exploded.
It's that switch that just turns on in you when you're a kid, even. That's a good way to kind of localize it and you know, how to think about it. Because it's just that thing. It's like, oh, I'm not attracted to boys or girls or whatever. And then all of a sudden you are, you know, or I'm not into this thing. I don't like video games. You play the right game. And then all of a sudden you are, type thing. You know, it's just like this light switch that just goes off. There's no really rhyme or reason to why. It just shows up.
Yeah.
And then I love that he shows up again, like through the window. It's just like, this is so stupid and hilarious. And she's just so stupid and hilarious too. And she's just this really literal sponge of, like a child, right? How we kind of think about them being this blank canvas to just absorb everything around her and just totally embrace it. And slowly but surely she gets these new kind of shackles put onto her, whether that be through Duncan or society, or, you know, there needs to be a higher meaning to everything, or making money or marrying kind of thing. Yeah,
and I like that because Duncan's character is so emotional, and I'm like when we first meet him, he's already, you know, touching Bella, like 2 seconds in after we met this man, and he's already touching her, you know, where he shouldn't be touching her 2 seconds into meeting a person. And then it's just so ridiculous, but you're right, it happens that fast. Or when that man was winking at his girl, how just angry he reacted. And you know, you said it so well, like, yeah, I'm not an angry person, but you're not an angry person until someone's flirting with your girl. Mm-hmm. Or you're not an angry person until you're put in a situation where you have no money, and now, you know, you're yelling at everybody. Or you're not in a situation where you fall so head over heels and in love with somebody, you think your world is gonna collapse when they leave you. You think your life is over. Oh my God, how dare they fall in love with somebody else? I mean, so dramatic, and it's so silly, and it's so hilarious. And it really helped me place him. There's also a really beautiful message in this scene where Bella and Madam Sweeney are talking, and Bella has this almost revelation that she just doesn't know what to do with her life and just doesn't know how to feel anymore. And Madam Sweeney tells her, oh, that's perfectly fine. You're in your dark period, and that's the best time to be in, because after your dark period ends, you can see the light. So you have to keep going. And I don't know, that was probably the most emotional part of the movie for me, because especially recently, I have been feeling like, man, how do you keep going? Everything's just ugh right now. And I'm sure a lot of people really felt that after COVID too, or during COVID. And just something about that, just something about someone reminding you there's something else after this dark period you're feeling that helps you push past everything else.
It gives hope and even like desire to have gone through something like that to, help you appreciate, getting to the other side,
Yeah. And I love that Bella found that, because obviously in her previous life, she didn't have that one person to help her get past that dark period. Because if she would have gotten past that, she wouldn't have killed herself. She could now become something else and have a wondrous life. And it's just so sad that she didn't have that, and now she does. And just something there about having people around you and people to care for you. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, she was, before God, she was a slave to the Duncans. She was a slave to that other guy who was her previous husband when she was Victoria.
Something?
And in turn, a slave to the worst things, that make her, which we all have been a victim to. We all fester in our fucking nonsense here and there, and sometimes for long periods of time, and sometimes just completely unable to get out of it. And that's one reason I like the kind of non-linear storytelling. Also, it being like, this is the worst case example of losing yourself to yourself, like just totally imploding on yourself kind of thing. But this time, that's not going to happen. This is a different kind of timeline where God intervened. From the moment the movie kind of opened up with Godwin, being God, being the Dr. Frankenstein kind of character, I was immediately on the charge of trying to read into this. I was like, this is it on the nose? I don't know how to read that as on the nose, especially when everything's so bizarre. I don't really know if it can be. It's kind of like pretentious. I don't really know what on the nose means exactly. It's kind of hard to define in my mind. But I was definitely on the charge of, there's something deeper here. And then when Bella started, which I didn't know anything about this movie going into it, I try to stay blind from the ads and everything. When Bella started developing and him bringing in Max, and then Max, by the time God wanted Max to marry, because that's an important part, right? God wanted Max to marry, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
I was starting to unpack, this is showing how the presence of God over the course of humanity's life has allowed it to develop in the way it is. That started to unpack throughout the film, not all in one go, but I was like, oh shit, I was in love with the movie all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's a great thought, because if we wouldn't have been very obvious with this character's name, you could have almost mistaken this for the control men have on women. But we just went kind of a step above that, so to say.
No, it totally makes sense. There is this flexibility that we put into some theologies where you can be forgiven. There's, which only makes his occupation awesome, because he's a scientist. He's a heavy researcher of the craziest kind. He's a mad scientist.
I love that.
So there's this built-in flexibility with God that is totally exercised in, reality, whether you believe in God or not, whatever theology, that almost makes this feel like, and it's just a perfect storytelling, that almost makes it feel like it's a good parent, like letting Bella out when she wants to go, when she's mostly ready and stuff. And so it's just really cool how that just comes to be from all these angles, and she's released to someone like Duncan, and it still is unbelievable. I'm really curious what the book is like. There's no way the book is like this. There's no way this was a smooth translation from book to movie. There was something here.
Yeah, he was probably definitely motivated by the book and sparked it into his own thing. Because I too would be very curious to see how the book is laid out.
Because otherwise, in this, I can't put this past Yorgos, of course. There's just a deep simpatico between the author, the vision, and his vision of how this can look like on the screen, which is totally possible. But I mean, I hate it in a way because this damages every other movie that tries to be something more than just a movie. You know, I love these kinds of movies, but it does make me want more out of everything. You know?
Oh no. Yeah, and even if you take Dr. God a little more literal and not so figuratively, I still love that too, because then we can dive into this implications of ethical and unethical surgeries and experiments that he's doing. You know, because we see this like duck with half duck, half, I don't know, dog. I can't remember them exactly. And even at the end, what we do to Alfie, her ex-husband, we turn him into a goat, so to speak. And, you know, Bella herself, her experiment, transplanting a baby's brain into the mom. Like, what the fuck? How weird is that? And I'm not sure when a lot of crazy experimentation took place in different parts of the world. I know this is set in the Victorian era, so I don't know if there's something there too, but I like that. I like that a lot.
I like that a lot too. There's this emphasis on how humanity next to the rest of the natural world on Earth is an abomination and how out of place we are. I like how God's other experiments are also, you know, kind of echoing that. That's really neat. Yeah, I think the Victorian era, that late 1800s era, was just a really hot space for a lot of sciences.
Okay.
So there's this, you know, kind of World's Fair vibe to the craft.
I can definitely see that here. It seems like I've kind of been on an introduction kick and just really paying attention to how movies are being introduced and kind of how that affects me as a viewer.
I mean, I love that you say that because that setting the stage is so important. It really is. It sets the stage, you know, it's essential.
Yes, especially after Past Lives. I think that's when it started kicking in my head, like, okay, I'm going to start paying attention to the introductions and see how that affects the rest of the movie for me. But I absolutely loved not only the first act, but the introduction to this movie. It was so crazy. It was so bizarre. My crossed hands literally uncrossed as we got 5 minutes in. It was so bizarre. It was so surreal. I mean, it was in black and white. We had Bella playing the piano with her hands and then her feet. And you're like, what the fuck? What is going on? And then you have, you know, the awesome, amazing score playing. And then the next scene, they're eating breakfast. And she's just being weird. Okay, whatever. I now know she's a weird character. But then the doctor has this weird ass burp that's like a bubble and then it explodes and Bella's clapping. And he's hooked up to this weird ass machine. I mean, that was just awesome. That was awesome. And then he's getting ready to go to work, you know, and she's following him, attempting to say the word bye, but she's like, bye. Like, it was so funny. And then there's this like goat pig looking thing. I don't know what it was. And I was left like, what the fuck did I just watch? And why did I like it? Those bubbles, those burp bubbles, whatever they were fucking amazing. And I liked them way more than I should have. But oh my God, that introduction was insane. And, you know, I'm not a camera person. I don't know cinematography very well, but those shots, I don't know if you would call them like fish lens, fish eye kind of shots.
Yeah, a combination of kind of a use of vignette effects maybe in the fisheye lens, and I'm not exactly sure either, but there's definitely this emphasis on how we view the world.
Masterpiece. That introduction was a masterpiece. And not gonna lie, I was a bit scared that the first act was gonna be this fucking great that I was scared for the rest of the movie. But that was still good too. That was still phenomenal.
Yeah, I think that's actually pretty common with, so-called good movies. That first section tends to be really strong, and then it loses a lot of its momentum throughout. That happens with so many things. I don't read a lot of fiction, but you can probably speak to this, that I imagine that happens a lot in books, but I know that happens a ton in video games too, where your introduction can be really strong and delivering out gameplay and story and stuff, and then you're just flattens out completely. You're just ready to be done with everything. But movies, I mean, it's probably the most common place for it to happen, where the first 15 minutes are always really good in a good, in like a good movie, generally kind of good movie. And then it lands and you're just like, all right, it's all of a sudden forgettable.
Yeah.
Because it didn't have that bookend. It doesn't need to be a parallel moment, but there's something, there needs to be a complete vision there, right? We have a very big ass parallel moment here, but there's not only one way to tell a story.
Yeah, that's true.
I think we get a little bit of non-linearity here with her jumping off the bridge in the very beginning, and then her, reconnecting with Alfie a little bit. There's connective tissue there happening. This is the worst case scenario, and this is when she is able to will her way out of it. The intro was glorious. I mean, their whole movie is glorious. But I love that you're at the level where you feel that way.
I have never felt my defenses come down so quick watching this introduction. Going into a movie kind of like, ugh, I don't want to watch this. The trailer looks bad. Like, whatever. Never has it dropped. Like, whoa, what? Whoa. And then I have never felt scared for a movie. No, please don't let this get worse. Please, whatever you do, please keep this. What I just watched, please keep it. And it did, and it was awesome. There's a lot of emotions there watching this, I'll tell you what.
Yeah, I mean, there sure is. And like structurally, they do a amazing job balancing the front half of the movie, or the front third, and the later parts where, because Bella's an idiot and she can't give us a lot other than being an idiot and being funny and kind of eventually being kind of sexual there. So we have to balance it with people like Willem Dafoe and Rami Youssef. And of course we get them throughout the entire film. But the film's obviously competent enough that it stands on its own when Bella can also stand on her own. Because she adopts this way of speaking like her papa.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What did Duncan say? How do you not know what...
Yeah, he said, how do you know what the word...
empirically means?
But you don't know what a banana is? That was... Oh my god, that was hilarious. And she just looked at him like... duh, that's because that's how it is. There's no other way.
Speaking of God and Max's relationship, I must say that probably was my favorite part of the movie. Out of all the things I like about this movie, which might be everything, Max and God's relationship was awesome. He was almost this like course correction that God brought into his own life to like just question him, to also monitor him.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, because God would tell him these things that his dad would do, the idea of evolution, right? And Max would just be like, what the fuck are you talking about? It was awesome.
Then he'd just say, yeah, he was a man of unconventional mind. Like, what? Did you just hear what you said?
And there's this like romantic thing about it, because there's this deep love that God has for his dad to allow him to create something like Bella. It's just the concept of evolution making the idea of God, allowing God to make the idea of Bella. It's just a great train of thought that I could have never imagined working anywhere ever, let alone in a movie.
No, for sure. And you even have this kind of crazy event where after Bella leaves, they get a new Bella because that's the only logical thing for them to do because they're scientists. And it's so funny. It's so funny. No, but I definitely liked their duo that they had there. And I really liked William Dafoe's character. I liked him. I mean, basically just what you said. The whole film was great. It's hard to pick what exactly we liked about it, but bits and pieces are just a little bit more of a standout, or maybe just kind of click to our heart or our personality more. Not that some other parts are bad, but that just something we can relate to or click with. But I really liked everything God had here. Everything he had to say, everything about his cadence, everything about his personality. I mean, even till the end where he managed to go to Bella's wedding and he's walking and they're like, "Oh God, you're walking." He's like, "Yeah, I had this for the pain and this for the energy and, cocaine because I'm just a little partial to cocaine." Like, oh, it was just so funny to me. Everything he did, from his burp bubbles to when he's dying to just how offhandedly he treats his trauma from his dad. I loved it. And then now you having this theory of evolution is making me just blown away.
Are you familiar with Willem Dafoe?
No. I know the name. It's a popular...
He's a big deal,
Yeah.
I know this is said by some folks, like, people think Leo is maybe in the running for one of the greatest actors. I'm not sure if people feel that way or not. But Willem Dafoe is actually in the running. It's kind of hard to say, but he's in the running as one of the greatest actors to ever live. There's no doubt about it. Willem Dafoe is amazing, right? We love Joaquin Phoenix. He's got a weird cadence to him and everything, but there's just something different about Willem Dafoe that kind of puts him on a different level.
No, for sure. I mean, I'm not too familiar with him. I'm probably sure I've seen him in different things, and the name is just so iconic. But I mean, he did a phenomenal job here. They all did, really, but he was just a standout for me. Maybe I just love mad scientists.
One section I liked a lot was when Bella and Duncan were in like that city area, and she tried some pastry or something, and it introduces like this trifecta of an idea with food, music, and dancing, and how fundamental they are to us. I like the idea of the coming of age story, but when I see things like that, and of course, God and some of the other things that I've already mentioned, I can't help but to believe that there's just this bigger picture here.
One of my favorite sequences was a little bit after that when we're in the boat. And that whole sequence, everything on the boat, just gave me so many different feelings. I didn't know how to process this. And I still don't think I know how to process this, but it was just absolutely beautiful. Everything from feeling anxious and trapped with Bella because she's such, a free spirit. She's such a child that we don't want to trap her. We love her at this point. We want Bella free. And here's this man keeping her here for himself. I mean, that was an insane feeling. And that was just captured in the first, 2 seconds? Him letting her know, yeah, well, you're on a boat. She's like, what? Excuse me? And then her meeting Martha and Harry, and she starts being introduced to books. And I love where you took it into this being a representation of the sea of ideas, and it just makes so much sense. Especially with the part where Duncan tells her, you're losing a little bit of your beautiful way of talking. And just, I don't know how to describe my feelings, him saying that to her. to when he throws her books overboard, and then it turns into humor when she's just handed another one. Like, there's plenty of books, there's plenty of information out here. Don't worry.
It's even the only section in the movie where she's writing and she needs ink.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
I like that there's this 1-2 kind of thing that happens where Duncan, first introduced as this pipeline of emotions, and first starting with temptation and sexual desire, these very primitive, very, very primitive things, then evolved into something more, something challenging and also simultaneously trapping, right? We're trapped in our own head of ideas. We have to challenge ourselves. We have to challenge each other, and we got to find our way out of it. And there's even a funny thing there where kind of maybe a little bit of reality sets in, where maybe Bella kind of figured herself out and she wasn't allowed on the boat anymore because she had established her view in the world. And so now she's casted out of the sea of ideas because she's taken the ideas from the sea that she needs, that she wants, or something. I'm not too sure, but that's a great section.
No, I love that you say that, because in this section, Bella's also shown the cruelty of the world, where we have the dead babies, essentially. And that part was very emotional, not only because she sees that and she's like, this is the first time she's experiencing something so cruel. I mean, it's like when you're a kid and it's the first time you discover that a thing could die, or that your animal can die, or just something so cruel. And it was so emotional. But then to add on top of that, you have Harry, the character who showed her this in the first place, and he's so cynical. And then he tells her that he just wanted to show her this because he couldn't stand how happy she was. And just throwing that into the mix of emotions I was already feeling with Bella, oh my God, it was insane. But then, like you said, she figured it all out. She has it. She's getting it set in her mind how she wants to view this world, and kind of her part of it. And you just see her becoming a bit more confident because, like I said a little bit earlier, this cruelty that we experience in the world, unfortunately, helps you become a stronger person.
Yeah, it's really kind of awesome when he shows her, he's like, can't stand how happy you are. Oh, and you can't do anything about this.
Yes.
He just totally rips that out of her.
And she's like, oh yeah, watch this, and goes and steals all his winnings, all of Duncan's winnings from his casino, because, I can do something about this, or I will try. And there's also just something so beautiful there. Like, people who try, they don't know if it's real or not. They don't know if it's going to make a difference or not. But you know what? I'm going to die trying. And this whole sequence, not even visually, which visually this whole movie is absolutely stunning, but this section's just a little bit more surreal than the other sections. But just feeling wise, just how it made me feel, this was awesome.
Yeah, totally. And I like that you mentioned that this section was a little more surreal because it's the innards of the mind. Of course it's gonna be more surreal, right?
Mm-hmm. And then there's this funny bit where Duncan is gonna throw Martha overboard, and then Bella's like, you're not gonna do that, just kind of showing a little bit of their dynamic, and bringing her back into a little bit of her childishness. And then I like that Martha's like, oh no, somebody's planning to murder me. And she was like so sarcastic about it. And it was so funny. It was a very funny scene right there, along with this just is so insanely emotional sequence. Just a great balance. One of my favorite parts, visually, but definitely not emotionally, was the ballroom dancing scene, especially when they are dancing. And I feel kind of weird saying that because that was also in the trailer, and that was something that was advertised, which is something I didn't like. But then watching it here, after knowing everything I know about these characters now, I really liked it. And I think that part was just so fun to watch. Because here we have a lot of different camera work, if that's the correct way to say it. We have, the fisheye lens thing going on where when Duncan is getting into a fight, but we also have this very wide shot of, them dancing, and then we have some really close zoom in shots. I mean, it was great. It was amazing to watch.
And there was this balance between this primitive side of unable to control yourself to the music, with Duncan being more of the bashful and trying to suppress this within her. And we all having a little bit of that in us with X, Y, and Z, not necessarily dancing, but wanting to do something but being a little shy about it.
Yeah.
What do you think the fisheye lens, these vignettes, and this cool camera work? I don't know how to really explain it. I'm not great with cinematography, but it was awesome. It was so cool. It makes me think fisheye lens, fish eyes are widely considered to be the first eyes developed here on Earth. And so there's this evolutionary kind of tie to the beginnings of life and how the world is seen. That's where my mind goes, so I don't know.
That's fucking awesome. I didn't even develop an idea of what these fisheye lenses scenes could be. And it's funny you say that, because I think when we're introduced to Bella for the first time, that's how it starts out. When she's on the piano with her legs and feet. Like, we're almost born as fish. That's cool. I like that. I like that thought. I was just thinking of that scene in Evil Dead Rise where that demon lady,
the mom
is, and we see her through the peephole, and just kind of creepy, just playing with our emotions here, making us feel distorted almost.
That's an awesome movie.
Yeah, it really is. And that's kind of where my mind was with these fisheye lens scenes. But I like your idea because it fits beautifully into your analysis there.
Yeah, and it highlights these ethereal kind of spotlight on Bella. Everything else around her is not really per se part of humanity. They're just representations of ideas and maybe other godly entities. It's however you want to read into it, doesn't really matter, because there might as well not be any other characters. Everything might as well just be an experiential thing for Bella. And so I think the fisheye lens, or whatever that is, emphasizes that. I can't remember exactly, but I wouldn't be surprised if the fisheye lens thing laid off a little bit when we were on the ship, because it's less about the individual and more about the concept of concepts. I'd have to rewatch that, though. It's a long movie, so forgive me.
I think you're right.
I think there's a obvious through line with this to me. This is very obvious to me. I don't know what people were pulling out of this movie. I don't know what the original author or Yorgos may be thinking. I'm kind of repulsed by watching interviews because of just the nature of PR and stuff, and no one ever asks good questions. So, and a lot of times the actors are there, and it's just kind of a get together and a fun thing, which I'm all for, but it gets in the way of real criticism in that conversation.
No, I definitely agree. A lot of the interviews I watched just kind of show you what kind of chemistry the cast had, if they had any or not, and just the fun they had behind it, but nothing too deep. Because how deep can you get in a, 30-minute interview?
It really has to be a conversation between the two, and then, God forbid, Yorgos, go on some tangent. And he may not want to. It may be kind of a David Lynch thing where he just doesn't want to talk about the work. He just wants people to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
So, which I can't help but to respect the shit out of. I wish everybody did that. Everyone kind of does do that to varying degrees, I guess, because the nature of the PR thing, like I just said. But there's no doubt there's this mystique around, people like David Lynch who just do not speak about their work. And I mean, as far as I could tell, Yorgos didn't really speak too much either.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Joaquin Phoenix too. I think he's got a little bit of that too. I've seen him be very frustrated in some interviews because of the type of questions people are asking.
Yeah.
And what does he get? Shit talk. He gets backlashed because how dare he get so upset in an interview?
God forbid someone have some passion.
Exactly.
God win, forgive.
God win, forgive.
Just one little tidbit, speaking of God win. I liked this parallel with him being compared to a dog, because of course God spelled backward is dog.
Oh my god.
And there's this element of fearing God that's kind of planted throughout the film, and that's of course very at home in a lot of theology.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. I thought we were just playing on how everyone is scared of people with deformities, but yeah, duh, of course, and plus some.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that, because when I first saw like screenshots about this, or like heard about, small little things here and there, I thought there was gonna be a little bit more of a Frankenstein thing going on here, and there is and isn't, but I was like, oh, kind of thing from the get-go. What do you think about Bella prostituting? I thought it was glorious, because prostitution is widely considered to be the first profession in humanity.
Oh shit, that's hilarious. I thought it was kind of genius almost, because they're in a situation where they need quick money fast, and that's just what came just naturally. I don't know, it was so genius for them to do that to her. I like that you say that though. And I can't help but to love how much of a game she made out of it, and just to make it such an experience for both her and her clients, because a lot of the people that go, I'm assuming, I don't know, I haven't done any research on this, but just on my own thoughts here, I assume a lot of the people that go to these places don't have companionship or have other issues that they're trying to hide with sex or whatever. And here she is trying to connect on a deeper level than just screwing around.
It's our first time seeing Bella trying to connect. So there's this next layer kind of revealed of what's humanity all about.
So I thought it was very genius to make her do this.
It's a perfect little scenario for that to happen. It's genius. It's completely fucking genius.
And I loved how mad Duncan got. And you have this parallel with Duncan and Max. I mean, you said it very well in the beginning. Classy versus emotional. And just Duncan's reaction to her doing that versus Max's reaction. Max is like, well, it's your body. You're doing whatever you want. And almost a best friend kind of way. You should also get yourself checked out. He says that to her. So it's like a very caring person.
Yeah, because Max, in a way, with Bella at the end, starts to replace God. And so there's a lot of weight put on both of them. And Max is the one who kind of carries that parenting weight.
Yeah.
And of course, Bella's, as far as their dynamic and becoming a duo of mad scientists, she's the child-like innovator and ideas man, which I ultimately love, that morals, class, kind of emotional maturity, and just humanity in a nutshell ends up murdering God, because God basically dies from Bella being away for too long. Just like we've lost touch with God in our world. God is dead.
And I like how you end that too with the idea of science and scientific pursuit is born. And then the film ends with Bella becoming a doctor.
Yeah, basically finishing God's work.
Yeah.
Pushing things as far as we can.
Yeah, I like that little beautiful bow you put there. To switch topics here a little bit, how about those title cards?
it's kind of funny because there's such a linearity to the most of this movie that they're almost not even important. But there is this element of like pit stops or milestones within humanity. And so the title chapter card things are really fun. And of course they're amazing looking, right? And they say different cities, Alexandria, Athens, or whatever on them, London. It's really funny how we tie them to different cities. And I'm curious, I didn't really look into it, but is there a linearity in development and evolution within those cities? Because we went from maybe Alexandria, which is probably widely considered to be one of the first like mega civilizations, to London, which is a very modern mega civilization. So there's probably some linearity there that is touching on the evolution of humanity as well.
Yeah, I think Paris.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, visually, those title cards were absolutely great. They were awesome. I wish I would have paused it to kind of look at them a little bit more, just because they were so clever and kind of cute in a way, with Bella doing weird things in these title cards. And I would just be curious to see and maybe pause them or look at them a little bit longer to kind of see what's going on, and then place them into the film and what's going on with Bella.
Yeah. Yeah, they were beautiful, no doubt. How do you feel about the rest of the movie visually? Because it's, other than the fisheye lens and everything that kind of, distorts it a little bit, but there's just this otherworldliness, obviously.
Yes, it's very, very surreal, especially with the colors of the sky, no matter where she's at. And I do love the black and white to full color that we did. And I believe even in some of the scenes, it might be the other way around, but in some of the scenes where we were black and white and we had a flashback, they would be in color. So I kind of like that. Not sure what it meant. It'd probably, be kind of specific scene to scene, but that was very nice. The whole movie was very beautiful. I loved all of Bella's costumes. I loved her big, giant, poofy sleeves. I loved that. I loved her outfit. I loved that when she was beginning to walk and she was with Duncan, he made her wear heels, and she's just beginning to walk, so she can't really walk in heels, so she's like kind of fumbling there, but then how sure of herself she is in all her outfits later on, even to a point where she's, being a prostitute, she's just letting all hang out. I mean, the costumes were great here. Everything was great. All the details were great. And one of my favorite little details, I guess would be a prop, is Dr. Godwin's horse carriage. That cracked me up.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this is just how people had their carriages back then. But then right after we see his carriage, we see everyone's normal ass carriage with real horses pulling them. So it absolutely killed me to see that. Even with the detail of her hair growing really fast to kind of show us her progression and just how fast she is developing, was all a very nice touch.
I totally agree. Visually, this movie is truly something to study. Going to film school, studying film just in general, whatever, trying to make a film happen. It completes a vision, right? I like what you have to say about the horse carriage, the horse head carriage, because it reminds me of how a lot of these electric cars coming out have these like artificial hums and vibrations to simulate being in a car with a motor.
Oh my gosh.
And so there's this, tether to something that once was, with attaching a horse head to this carriage to simulate to other horses, I guess, that, this is another horse.
I'm a horse.
And, it's got a motor on it, though. I love it. That's very funny.
That's funny. And even now, we kind of still relate to the power of a car with horsepower.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So, yeah, that's hilarious. It's like a fake trying to fit in with the rest. One of the last things I want to mention here is I saw a lot of very mixed feelings about how much nudity and intimate sexual scenes there were, and just kind of how there's always been this fight with those kinds of scenes being necessary or not, and how people just don't think they're completely necessary whatsoever in films. And we had a lot here, of course, with Bella. And I guess I wanted to add my 2 bits in, saying how necessary these scenes were in this movie. For us as a species, oh my god. Literally growing up and having your sexual thoughts take over you in a way, and then discovering sex and discovering a new sexual partner that you connect with or you have fun with or whatever, and just kind of how relevant, I guess, that can be. But I know people feel that this wasn't necessary at all. And almost to add how we didn't make Bella very sexual here. Yes, she had sex, but we didn't over sexualize her. We didn't give her, these like lingerie outfits, or give her very over the top sex faces or moaning, or that kind of stuff that you see in some sex scenes. So I don't know, it was very sensible.
It's probably obvious what I'm going to say, but it's true, because it's an essential part of every species, of course, but especially humanity, right? And we get it kind of hammered down our throat a little bit, just right, just so, by Harry, that we're just beasts. We're just like them, we're just like our brethren apes over there who just randomly fuck each other for the 9th time that day. There's something animalistic about it. It loses all of its sexuality.
Yes.
There's something even bored about it, and overstated, which we see with the prostitution. The boredom thing I thought was really funny, where Bella and Duncan were going at it and the camera just panned over to like a dove.
Oh yeah.
It's just a funny thing that everyone will experience throughout life, where you're doing something that's intense, not necessarily sex, but could be, and you just get distracted by the smallest little stupid thing. Maybe in your head, maybe a dove on the cabinet. And I just thought that was really funny, because it helps, kind of like Beau's Afraid, where there's just this, where the vision just trivializes something like sex. Which, I mean, yeah, it's a trivial thing. Every human does it, or is at least capable of it, right? Every species on the planet does it to some degree, for the most part, I guess. So it's a very trivial thing on Earth, but it's a very essential thing, so it needs to have this kind of echoing thing throughout the film. And in that process, it kind of loses its fun, because where does Bella land with it? She tries to, she's put in a position where she needs to connect with the person to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's no longer just fun. If Bella from the very beginning of the movie, before she left a god, immediately jumped into prostitution, she would have been good for however long, that before she developed. She probably would have been a completely different person, I guess, at that point. But that process is pretty essential to the movie, and people who have a problem with it, I guess, didn't get the movie in one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't get anything out of it, which sucks for them, I guess. I don't really care, but...
No, I definitely agree with you that in a lot of movies, they have made these sexual scenes so unnecessary that now a movie like this has to suffer. And it's really not the point.
Yeah, and people are weirdly uncomfortable with it just in general.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's very taboo to not only talk about it, but to have the nerve to put it in your movie. How dare you? First of all, you're calling a doctor God. You're calling a scientist God, and now you're putting all these sex scenes. Man, I can see people's problem with this, for sure. With just the taboo nature of all these things.
Did you see any reviews or other analyses out there about what the movie is?
I did see a little bit about people trying to pinpoint what Bella's development meant and just how much of a visually stunning movie this is and just how bizarre it is and people love it. And some people kind of trying to put this into perspective of a woman growing up and having all these men around her influencing her life, things like that.
Last thing I just wanted to briefly mention, not too much of an expert on these things, but I did notice the insane editing at parts. Of course, when you're watching a movie, you lose sight of things like this.
I know I did.
Yeah, especially with dialogue and the score going on. It's just there's a lot of moving parts, and so you lose sight of things like editing and sometimes camera work. The camera work's a little different in this movie,
Yes.
obviously, so it's kind of in your face. But I do think the editing is just insane, and the score, of course, was awesome.
Yes, the score had this like old-timey feel to it and some eeriness and some sharpness. Like it was almost alien-like in a way. I don't know. It was very, very cool.
And it was almost very punctual with like the actions when people were walking and doing things and stuff. It reminded me of, there's certain director, I can't remember anyone off the top of my head, but there's certain directors out here who will try to align walking and certain actions with the metronome of a musical piece and stuff. And I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. I think Wes Anderson has done a little bit of that, of course, right? But that's just so, I mean, I hate to say it, but just because of how many movies and stuff are out there, but just who does that?
Yeah.
Who has the vision, the complete vision to make something like that come to life?
Or the time to make it align.
Or the time, yeah. It's amazing. It's no short of amazing.
Yeah, especially a lot of the zooming in on people's faces when something weird was happening, or maybe someone said something and we would just zoom in on their face and have this score in the background, just making you feel like, what? It was so eerie, so bizarre. It was good.
All right, well, that is all we got. I hope we did this movie justice. And thank you for watching this movie with me. Thank you for talking about it here with me today.
No, thank you. Because if it weren't for you, I definitely would not have seen this movie. I would have looked at the trailer and been like, that is a big fat nope. And I almost hate how harsh I was towards it when I heard it was nominated for a lot of things at the Oscars. So I apologize to whoever cares.
Well, you're welcome. Yorgos is an essential pit stop for anyone who has any interest in movies and the experience that comes along with it and what a movie can look like. It's just out of this world. But do you have a budget guess for me here today?
I have a guess. Is it a good guess?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I would have a hard time guessing too. Trust me.
I gave it 35 million just because Yorgos seemed like a man that can spend his money wisely. Do I know that? Absolutely not. No clue what's giving me that inclination, but that's my guess.
Well, my gut tells me that you cheated because it says here 35 million.
No!
On Wikipedia.
No way!
Yeah. Congratulations.
No way!
I think this is the first time you've guessed it correctly.
All right, I can graduate. I can leave. I don't know. Do I quit? What happens now?
Now you get a promotion.
Yes. Oh my god.
And it went on to make 104.6 million, making good money. I think it's still at theaters. It's been at theaters for a while now.
Good. I like those numbers.
And apparently over on Letterboxd with 1.01 million people.
Ooh. That's a lot.
That's a lot of people. That's more than I would have guessed. I didn't know Yorgos was part of the mainstream now. Maybe this is the first. I'm not sure if The Killing of the Sacred Deer was this big. I don't remember it being as big as Poor Things, but I don't know. But they're weighing in at a 4.2.
Okay. I mean, in the fours, at least, is really great. So, okay. I'm giving this a 4.5.
I'm really glad you like this movie. You know that?
I know that now.
Because now you can come at people and surprise them by how good your taste is.
All right. I got a movie card. Do they have those?
I'll make one.
All right.
I've been batting it around in my head for a week now, and I think this movie is a 5 out of 5 for me. I think that's the first one on the podcast, too.
That's a 5?
Yeah.
I think I gave Godzilla -1 a 5. This movie's not a 5 for me. I hate that it's 4.5 to 5. You know, I would probably ideally give this like a 4.8. But that's not how our scale works. So I have to round down.
It didn't make you cry enough, did it?
Yeah, it didn't make me cry enough. That's for sure. Maybe if we would have thrown in a big monster, I don't know. A shark? Perhaps. It definitely required a lot of thought after watching it. It definitely required me to do my homework. And I don't quite like that.
Yeah, but I hope you've learned Yorgos is a man who deserves it.
Oh, for sure. This film definitely deserved me thinking about it because it's so beautiful once you think about it and once it clicks in your head and once you get over yourself like I had to. Yeah, I think with Godzilla -1, my chin was like covered with tears.
All right, you guys, thank you for listening to this episode of the Filmistines. I really hope we did this movie justice. I really, really do. This is a fantastic movie. But remember, we post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday over on patreon.com/Filmistines, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, all the goods. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Come subscribe to Patreon. Come request a movie. Come ask a question. We're going to start taking questions and reading them here on the episode at the end. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Filmistines. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon at patreon.com/Filmistines, and follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmistines, signing off.